Hey, readers. Welcome to the Currently Reading podcast. We are bookish best friends who spend time every week talking about the books that we've read recently. And you should know we won't shy away from having strong opinions. So get ready.
We are light on the chit chat, heavy on the book talk, and our conversations will always be spoiler free. Today, we'll discuss our current reads, a readerly deep dive, and a little something bookish before we go.
I'm Meredith Monday Schwartz. I'm both a mom and a Mimi and a full-time CEO living in Austin, Texas. And I am leaning into my reading season.
And I'm Kaytee Cobb, a homeschooling mom of four living in Arizona, and my outgoing books are doing the work this week. This is episode number 36 of season 8, and we are so glad you're here.
Oh, no, that sounds interesting, Kaytee. I don't know what that means. I love trying to guess.
I like doing a little hint and then having to explore it a little more later. Y'all, today for our deep dive, we're going to be talking about the oldest books on our TBRs and doing a little bit of investigating around those titles. But first, we'll get started the way we always do with our bookish moments of the week. Meredith, what is yours?
All right. Well, we've mentioned the fact that it is spring in Texas, spring fever, as our friend Elizabeth Barnhill talks about.
Mhm.
And it is beautiful. Texas will always show up and show out for spring. We are getting some gorgeous rain, but then we're also getting some gorgeous, sunny, mild temperatures. So it's really the best of all worlds. But I am feeling the need to be outside a little bit more in the sun or near the sun with my reading. So this weekend, my husband and I have been spending quite a bit of time getting our backyard ready for spring and summer. And what that looks like for me from a reading perspective is brand new cushions, because we have a family of squirrels that has gone in to 3/4 of our cushions, like our chaise lounges, our benches. They've left our sofa area alone, our outdoor kind of pergola sofa area, but they've gone and just dug holes like a foot in diameter.
Oh my gosh.
And they've taken all the stuffing out. Now, hopefully they have some really bougie nests that they've
for
made
sure
with this stuff. I hope. But I needed brand new cushions. So we've gotten brand new cushions. We've cleaned an inch of pollen off of everything because everything is yellow here in Texas at this time of year. We've vacuumed our outdoor rug. We've done all of the things. I've got new pool noodles because my favorite way to read is to listen and swim back and forth slowly. And I use the word swim with air quotes because it's really kicking my feet with my pool noodle and my AirPods in my ears. And that is my favorite summer way to read. I can't wait to do it. So this has been about leaning into my season. At the end of the show, we're going to talk about another way that I'm leaning into my reading season that's different, but this is the physical season. So I thought we'd start here.
Okay, I like it. I love that we don't really do spring cleaning in Arizona because spring is but a breath here. But I did just clean all my windows to see my backyard in basically a new light because they've been gross and dusty for so long that I was like, look at my backyard. It's so pretty out there.
Look at that. Yes. I had to replant all of my plants because we freeze like 2 times and then half my plants are gone. So we had to replant everything, remulch everything. Just an overall freshening is what needed to happen. And it makes me feel so good. It makes me want to be back there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So fun. I feel like I need to come visit. But that's not what my bookish moment is about this week. Like I said, my outgoing books are doing the work this week. So I had 2 incidences this week where I had to peruse my outgoing bookshelf. Y'all who've been listening for a long time, you know that when I finish a book, if I have a physical copy of it, I have to kind of triage it, right? I have to say, is this a forever keeper? Does it go in this section of the shelves or this one? Or does it go on my outgoing bookshelf, which is right by my front door? And the goal there is that when people leave my house, they also take some books with them, right? We are givers in this family. So twice this week, it served its purpose. It lived into its ideal self. First, on Tuesday, I had a friend that I hadn't seen in years come into town to visit during her kids' spring break. And we did the obligatory stand and look at the bookshelves thing, right? We talked about my favorites. We talked about stuff on my TBR, things that matched up with her or that were different. Then I also brought her to the giveaway shelf to make some decisions about which books would travel home with her in her car to New Mexico. We had a great time. We chose 6 books of various genres, plus a few more for her kiddos to read. So I think 10 books left my house. I felt very good about that. The next day,
Nice.
I got a text from my friend Gina, who was putting together a giveaway basket for a raffle. She said she had gathered a number of reading adjacent items, a mug, a notepad, a journal for this giveaway basket, but was hoping that I could supply the books for the haul. Of course, the answer was yes, right? So I perused the shelves again and brought a great mix of backlist gems of all different genres. I set them aside to give them to her the next time we got together. I love it when my read and loved books come together and like serve the world for good. It made me so happy.
And you're making room on your shelf for more. So that's just a virtuous circle all the way around.
Yeah, and it's still way too full. So if anybody wants to come visit, I've got books for you. We can make it happen.
That is so fun.
Let's talk about some of those books that we've read and loved, or maybe not, though. What is first on your current reads this week, Meredith?
All right. I have a really, really good mix of books today because I have a brand new police procedural series, the first one of which I absolutely loved. I have a memoir, which you know I don't bring those very often at all, that had me absolutely laughing hysterically and shedding a few tears. And then I have a brand new release work of literary fiction that I have a very spicy take about.
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm excited to talk about this, but sort of not too, because man, I know I'm going to get comments. But let's start with, for my mystery lovers, a brand new to me police procedural series that I absolutely loved. This first book is called A Question of Guilt, and it's by Jorn, Lier, Horst. Here's the setup of this first book in the series. Our book opens with a veteran Norwegian detective, William Wisting, receiving a puzzling anonymous letter during a much-needed holiday break. Just a single case file number that points to a 20-year-old murder of 17-year-old Tony Vaterland, killed on her way home from work in 1999. Back then, because he really was desperate for a conviction, the police sent her spurned boyfriend, Danny Momrak, to prison for the crime. But the mysterious letter suggests that they got the wrong man and that the real killer is still out there. Wisting is a principled chief inspector in the coastal town of Larvik who's been solving crimes since 1984. And he is known for his meticulous, methodical approach and his unwavering commitment to justice. My favorite kind of police detective. And he is unwavering in his commitment, even when it means questioning old convictions. He is not a guy who's going to shy away from maybe he got it wrong. He's going to try to get it right. Well, more cryptic letters arrive linking this cold case to other more recent investigations, and Wisting finds himself in a terrifying race against time to figure out what these messages mean and identify the sender and make sure that the true killer is behind bars. All right, 3 things that we have to know about A Question of Guilt before we dive in. First, this is Nordic noir that's actually noir, like emotionally noir, procedurally noir, atmospherically noir, dark. We're talking Norwegian coastal towns in winter. And if that doesn't immediately make you want to grab a blanket and settle in, this is not going to be your vibe. Now, I like cold in summer. I like to read about cold places in summer in Texas. That makes me feel good. Second, if you're expecting thriller pacing, like dangling off of cliffs or a ticking time bomb counting down, this is not for you. This is methodical police work, the kind where you're checking alibis and cross-referencing old case files, and you're doing that actual detective stuff. It takes time. Third, and this is the kicker, Jorn Lier Horst was an actual police officer before he started writing crime, and it shows in every single page of this book. That feels really authentic in a way that a lot of crime fiction doesn't. So I stumbled onto this book, which is, again, the beginning of a series. I've already read 2 in the series when I was wandering through Daunt Books in London. You guys know that is one of my 2 favorite books there. I went to the Scandinavian section. Remember, Daunt Books organizes part of the store by country. I spotted this one. And Actually, this is a series I'd never, ever heard of before. Not all of them are available in the US. So I grabbed a few while I was traveling through the UK. William Wisting immediately, of course, puts me in mind of Armand Gamache from the Three Pines series. He's got that principled approach, that methodical way of thinking through problems, and that commitment to justice that I just find so endearing. But what really grabbed me is that Horst doesn't just give us the cases. He, as with the Three Pines series, he gives us Wisting's whole life, the personal stuff bleeding into the professional. Like he's trying to solve this 20-year-old case, but he's also on vacation. That balance between watching him solve these interconnected mysteries while also dealing with his own personal stuff. I really love that. That's a sweet spot for me. The structure is brilliant. These are short chapters that make this incredibly easy to fly through. I ended up staying up until 2 a.m. one of the nights. This book is engineered for that. And there's this one particular strategy that they use for checking their lead suspect's alibi that I had never encountered before. I'm not going to spoil it because it involves some genuinely clever police work, but it had me thinking, why doesn't this get used in mysteries more often? So if you love like a Vera Stanhope, if you love the Anne Cleve series, if you love Inspector Morse, older Ruth Rich, all of those things, this series is going to be your jam, not to mention Three Pines. This book is called A Question of Guilt by Jorn, Lier, Horst.
Interesting. I love some Nordic noir as well, but you are the queen of the duos.
I love it, especially in Norway. I haven't read as much in Norway as I want to, and this is just such a good, so Norwegian. It just puts you there.
Yes, love it. All right, my first one is for the somewhat murderful, but definitely romance readers among us. I'm going to talk about How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates by Shailee Thompson. We owe this book to the novel Neighbor for their romance-focused list that they gave us in February of 2026. It was so fun that month to have that list focused entirely on romance, but still include something for all different types of readers. We had YA, we had this one, which is murderful. This one was, like I said, for the scary lovers. It's definitely laced with horror and plays on the scary movies of the 90s and the early 2000s. Our main character is Jamie Prescott. No, that's in Arizona. It's called Prescott. Her last name is Prescott, which is how the rest of you all say it. And her bestie, Lori. They head to a speed dating event as part of their promise to each other that Jamie will occasionally get out of the house. She has been working full tilt on her dissertation about the similarities between the horror movie classics of her childhood, so not like classics, but those 90s, 2000s classics, and the romantic comedies that shaped her. It was a high time for both of those in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So when she agrees to go out, she certainly does expect a whole room full of meh, he was fine, men, and then ice cream with her best girl afterwards, which sounds like a perfect date. What she doesn't expect is that the lights will go out, and when they turn back on, her current speed date will have his throat slit open across the table in front of her. So begins a single night of horrors and terrors as Jamie attempts to use everything she has learned about serial killers to survive. Because after a second blackout, where the bartenders and employees end up dead as well, it's clear that serial killer is what they're dealing with here. But a love triangle among the current survivors leads to Jamie questioning her number one rule, which is that you definitely shouldn't be doing the adult tango while being hunted by a serial killer. That and going off alone are the surest ways to end up dead. It'll take alliances, makeshift weapons, and making good choices to get to the other side of this speed dating event gone wrong. I thought this was so fun. It's definitely gory. It's definitely bloody. We've got intestines. We've got brain matter. It's gory. Y'all, don't let me sell you short on this. It's not for a cozy rom-com reader. However, it is rom-com also. It is bantery. It is quick-witted. It is a little bit silly. It's a little bit spicy as well, but it's just a short scene and mostly the other scenes are fantasizing about what could happen after this date from hell is over. I loved Jamie and the way that she uses her knowledge to get through this situation, including telling the other speed daters about her rules. How are you going to stay safe? She and Lori have these rules posted in their shared bathroom at the apartment that they share. So they both know them backward and forward. It's what they read when they're sitting on the toilet, right? I thought it was so fun and witty. It is definitely a bit bantery and rom-commy. I don't remember exactly, Meredith, but I feel like that is what turned you away from this one, even though overall, this is a pretty good mashup of our two favorite things to read.
Right. I would definitely say this book does exactly what it sets out to do. 100%. Yes, this book is not for me for a couple of reasons. It's very rom-commy and bantery, but again, for a lot of people, that's exactly what they want. So Reader Know Thyself. Also, I am just really realizing that for me, I do not love my mysteries and thrillers to also be sexy or romantic. Like that combination just doesn't work for me, but for a lot of people, it's like it takes the murder mystery and like ramps it up a notch. So
Right.
yeah. So this book does exactly what it sets out to do. It knows exactly what it is, and it doesn't shy away from that. And I really appreciated it for that. And it also is unlike anything I'd read before.
Definitely. So it's fun. It's also, if you have nostalgia around that area of the Blockbuster store from when you were junior high, high school, young adult, it's going to hit those notes for you. If you have seen all of those movies, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Nightmare on Elm Street 1,000 times, you're going to find some of these plot points really predictable. And that's the point, right? With both mysteries and thrillers and romance, we have some plot arcs that we expect to see over and over again. And that's what she's playing with here. So knowing that, it could be a good fit for you, but you have to know, I'm going to find some of this predictable and I might be able to see what's coming before it shows up on the page. And that has to be okay with you as a reader. I really loved it. I thought it was very fun and gory and gross. This is How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates by Shailee Thompson.
I'm actually glad that you brought that one because I do think for a lot of people, it's a great, like, tuck it in your pool bag kind of read.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. My next one is the aforementioned memoir. And I really love this one. This one is called This American Woman, a 1 in a Billion Memoir by Zarna Garg. Kaytee, do you know who Zarna Garg is?
I do not.
Okay. She's a comedian that I have followed for a really, really long time on TikTok.
Okay.
Look her up. You may have seen her, but she's so funny. And when I saw that she also had a memoir out and heard from a couple of readers that it was really good, I jumped on it. So this is the story of Zarna Garg. She is widely credited as being one of America's first Indian immigrant mom comedians, if not the first one of those. But as with every good comedian memoir, this is more than that, right? It's the story of Zarna, who grew up in a very affluent family in Mumbai. She was labeled too American in her entire childhood. She had opinions. She's like to talk back. She's kind of a little Enneagram 8, if I had to guess. Don't put her in a box, right? And at 14, she was given some really difficult choices, and she opted to be homeless on the streets of Mumbai over an arranged marriage that her father had planned for her. She eventually makes her way to Akron, Ohio, and begins the long, very winding road to figuring out who she really is. Okay, I went into this, as I said, already a fan. I followed her on TikTok for a long time, and I've seen her comedy special, and I wanted to read this as soon as I saw it. I wanted it to be funny, obviously, because Zarna is really, really funny, but I wanted there to be something more. I wanted insight into a kind of childhood and a kind of life that I have absolutely no frame of reference for, not unlike when you read Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, right? We're getting a lot of information about a kind of culture that I didn't grow up in. So you're learning a lot. And this book delivers on both of those counts. The funny element is there from page 1, no question. But what I didn't expect was just how incomprehensible Zarna's early life would feel to me. Again, she's from this wealthy family. She refuses to comply with some really big, not rules, but like she's
societal
being forced.
expectations.
Yeah, and she just is like, no. And she knew what that was going to cost her. Even at 14, she knew what that was going to look like. She wasn't wearing rose-colored glasses. And yet she does what she needs to do. And as she's telling the story, she doesn't pull a single punch, not about her family, not about the cultural norms of upper class India, not about how hard it is to start over in America as an immigrant with nothing but, honestly, the sheer force of will. She goes there. She does not pull punches. And she does every single bit of it with tremendous candor and with this trademark humor, which is either a gift that she was born with or something that she forged in the fire of surviving what she survived. And honestly, I'm not quite sure. It was probably both. By the time I got to the middle of this book, I was completely absorbed and fascinated by Zarna as a person. She is so much herself at every single stage of her life. She makes choices that always go against the grain and baffle the people around her, but she just keeps going. And that makes for an incredibly interesting kind of female main character in a memoir. You're not watching someone figure out who they are. You're watching someone fight to be allowed to be who she is. That's a totally different thing. The section that I found most fascinating, though, is the deep dive into her comedy career. I've always thought that stand-up comedy seemed like one of the hardest jobs in the world, like one of the bravest things that anyone could possibly do. And in this book, she gets into the weeds of what it actually involves. She talks about the craft of creating material from scratch, the reality that is having to market your own shows, business decisions that you have to think about when you're essentially a one-person operation and you're building something, but then you go big really fast. So like you're building the plane while you're flying it. This section was really interesting. And then the ending, by the time I got to the last page, it's because you're finding out about her marriage and her becoming a mom and all of these things. Of course, by the end, I knew the whole story. I understood the resilience and the grit that took her to get where she was. And then it's really great because you get to see how much, success that she's had. But then the thing that I didn't see coming was the bonus material at the end, which I did this on audio, so I can't be positive that it's not just on the audio. But at the end, her kids, I'm going to cry just thinking about it.
Oh.
Her kids who are now old, I think her youngest one is like 15. So like she has college kids and there's 3 of them. And then her husband, they each contribute their own essay in their own voice because she reads her own memoir. And then her husband and her kids contribute their own essay about what it was like to watch her become who she's become. And as a mom, there's something so particular when you hear your grown children or your partner talk about what they think of watching you claw for the life that you really wanted. And it was really wonderful. It was an amazing ending to a really great book. A format note, this is one I would highly recommend that you listen to on audio if you can. As I said, she narrates it. And I just don't think there's another way to do it. Her timing, her delivery, the moments where she lets things land before moving on, and the moments where raw emotion comes in, and they produced it in a way where they really let that happen without it feeling at all overdone or put on. This was unexpectedly a huge favorite for me. This is This American Woman, a 1 in a Billion memoir by Zarna Garg. And then you have to follow her on TikTok because she just slays me.
Well, I'll be looking for her comedy special for sure. I did look her up while you were talking, and I don't know if I've seen her before, but I'm still not on TikTok. So,
oh my gosh. Well, she does this thing. Her latest thing is she does this series where she acts as if she's a therapist, and then she has like her sister on the couch or her kids on the couch, but she's giving them like very traditional like Indian mom advice instead of their advice, and it's just, I'm sorry, I'm not making it sound very funny. She absolutely slays me. Just thinking about her makes me laugh.
I love it. That sounds great. Okay. My next one is also nonfiction. It's not funny. But I will talk about The Tears of Things by Richard Rohr. So Richard Rohr is a longtime favorite of mine and Meredith's for that matter, ever since reading The Enneagram, A Christian Perspective, which I went back and looked. I read it in 2021, but I know Meredith read it well before that because she was well ahead of me on the Enneagram journey. When I was invited to an in-person buddy read of this book, The Tears of Things, at my church, I jumped at the chance to get back into his work with this newest book. The Tears of Things is subtitled Prophetic Wisdom for an Age of Outrage. And as soon as I saw that on the cover, I was like, damn it, I probably need this book. Okay. Father Richard Rohr is a Franciscan priest who has really built a following, especially through his books and his Center for Action and Contemplation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Even though I lived in Albuquerque and New Mexico in general for 11 years, I never went to the center. That was not true of many of the readers in my cohort of buddy readers who are regular attendees and readers of his work, and they go to conferences and retreats. These are super fans. I felt like a brand newbie when I was in this room. In this book, which I also buddy read with my reading partner, Kaytee, Rohr asks how we can live with compassion and grace in this world that we're living in right now, which feels a little impossible. It's a world that feels like it only sows division and discord and leads many of us to anger and despair when we read the news. But he's saying there's something on the other side of that. Or turns back to the Jewish prophets of the Bible and the Torah and pairs them with the prophets of the modern age, people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Pope Francis. He gives us the words and the tools to examine biblical prophets in ways that reveal their full humanity, that these were not just people who like came down from a mountaintop and said the words and then walked out. They were full human beings, right? He invites us to be in community with people who believe differently or think differently than us, and asks us to reach toward grace rather than division. That is really hard for me.
Mhm.
This was a book that challenged me in a lot of big ways. According to Rohr, we're not supposed to just sit in anger, which I do a lot nowadays. I have a hard time being a full version of myself, but move through that anger to the tears of things, which is where the title comes from. The tears of things acknowledge those tears, acknowledge the grief in the ways that the world has disappointed us. The tears of things say that we can look around like the prophets of biblical times did and be fully human in our response to injustice. We don't have to just come down with fire and brimstone and be like, this sucks, and then walk away. The tears of things allows for heartfelt resistance and Rohr's signature pastoral warmth to shine through. I enjoyed this a lot, but it was hard for me. It challenged me in ways that I didn't expect. I like reading about the Enneagram, and that also challenges me in ways I didn't expect. So maybe this was my own naivete and ignorance, because Richard Rohr is good at that. He's good at kind of opening you up into thinking about something hard in a different way. Reading it in community, discussing each chapter with Kaytee is what really brought this one to life for me and made it something impactful rather than something that I just wanted to build walls against. I am a crier. I'm a person who leans into like, oh, I saw this beautiful thing and it brought me to tears. Or even watching Meredith try to get her emotions back in check, talking about a memoir by a comedian, that gets me choked up. I'm not afraid of tears, but letting anger turn into genuine grief over a situation that I don't feel like I have control over is hard for me. I would rather sit in anger because it feels powerful. And this book convinced me that it's worth it to try and make that transition from the one to the other. So I'm glad I read it, even though it was hard. I do recommend it. Of course, you can tell from this description that it is very Christian theology focused. Although I do think that anybody in the Jewish faith would get a lot from it as well. I really loved it. It is something that I currently read, which is why I'm bringing it to the show. This is The Tears of Things, Prophetic Wisdom for the Age of Outrage by Richard Rohr.
How great is it though when books really, really, really challenge us in a way that like we don't love it at all, but man, we need to hear. Like every time I read something by Pima Chodron, where I'm just like, oh
Yes, it's like getting a deep exfoliation treatment. I needed to rub off those calluses, but I do not like this at all in the moment.
My masseuse will say to me, okay, you have a choice. I can give you a massage that feels good now and does nothing for you later, or I can give you a massage that feels bad now and does something for you later. Your choice, lady. Like, which one do you want? But you can't have both.
Choose violence.
Okay. My third book is my recent work of literary, it's a recent work of literary fiction that I have a spicy take about. This is Vigil by George Saunders. Did you read? Have you read it?
No, I've read other George Saunders, but not this one.
This is, just came out a little bit ago. Here's the setup. Vigil takes place over the course of a single evening in a grand Dallas mansion where KJ Boone, a powerful oil company CEO, is spending his final hours on Earth. Into his bedroom comes Jill Doll Blaine. She's a spirit, not unlike in Christmas Carol. She has made this trip to someone's bedside who is dying 343 times before. Her job there is straightforward: to comfort the dying person and help guide them into what comes next. The problem is that KJ Boone, our oil company CEO, does not want comforting. As far as he's concerned, he's lived a big, bold, Texan, successful life, and he has absolutely nothing to answer for. It shouldn't actually say Texan, because I actually do not want to conflate KJ Boone with people who are Texan. Those are not the same things. The key tension of this book is that Jill is warm and capable and genuinely committed to this work that she's doing, this spirit work, but KJ Boone has a very, very high opinion of himself, and he refuses to reckon with the damage that his life has left behind. As the night wears on, visitors begin arriving, alive and dead, worldly and otherwise, all with their own claims on this man and on this moment, these last moments of his on Earth. And what unfolds is a kind of pre-death awareness that Boone never asked for, and that we are not at all sure that he will use properly. All right, Kaytee, I almost didn't read this book. I love Lincoln in the Bardo. And once I found the right format for it, I really, really loved Lincoln in the Bardo. I loved Swim in the Pond in the Rain. It's one of my favorite reading experiences in recent memory. So I thought that reading his new novel would be a no-brainer, slam dunk, immediate add to cart. But then I got it, put it on my shelf.
Yeah.
As it came out, I kept hearing over and over again from readers that I respect, like many, that they didn't just dislike this book. They didn't DNF this book. They hated this book, like want to throw it across the room. And they said they hated everything about it. The way it was written, the cadence, the sentence level prose. They didn't understand it. It didn't flow together. The headspace I was in, I couldn't take it on. So every once in a while, though, it would like call to like books. Sometimes a book will do this to me. I'll like really be called to it, almost like magnetically. I physically went to my bookshelf 3 or 4 different times, picked up the print copy, and either got ready to like pick it up and open it, or a few times I was like, you know what? I've heard so much bad about it. I'm just gonna remove it because I'm never ever going to want to read it. But every single time I did that, something stopped me. This little niggle that I owed it to myself to at least give it a shot. I'm glad I listened to it, because I sat down one afternoon for only about an hour and a half. This book is like a little short. And I had a genuinely excellent reading experience. Let me just say that first and foremost. I did not find this book difficult. I didn't find it hard to understand. I found it funny. I found it self-aware in a good way, not an annoying way. The lack of quotation marks didn't bother me at all. That never bothers me in a book, but your mileage, of course, could vary on that one. This just didn't trip me up. Now, I also went in thinking, from everything I'd heard about this book, that it was primarily a book about the dying oil company CEO, right? KJ Boone, which, fine, not exactly my most anticipated premise. What I didn't fully register until I was actually in it is that KJ Boone is not the main character. Jill Doll Blaine is. She's, as I said, the spirit that's assigned to comfort him. KJ Boone is everything that right now, sitting here, listen to me talk, you think he is. That's like it, end of story. He had a big life. He did a bunch of things, made a bunch of money. He's proud of it. Jill is interesting. She has her own backstory that gets revealed as the book goes on. She's someone you can root for. She has an understanding of who she was in her actual life and what led her to this particular job in the afterlife. And all of that adds a dimension that I wasn't expecting, but was really delightful to find. A lot of readers came away from this book feeling like it pounded them over the head with a message about climate change or corporate greed. But I completely disagree with that. KG Boone is a complete asshat. That's not in dispute. It was not in dispute on the back cover. I don't think that's at all what Saunders is asking us to debate here. The question the book is actually asking, I think, is much deeper and older, and I think a lot more interesting than that. Saunders is, I knew going into this, a Tibetan Buddhist. And what this book is genuinely grappling with is a very Buddhist inquiry, which is, what do we deserve at the end of a human life? Does every person, no matter what they've done, deserve compassion? What does justice look like from an afterlife perspective? Is there like a line of badness that gets you someplace truly terrible? And if so, who decides that? I found myself sitting with these questions long after I finished. And for me, that's a sign of a book doing something right. A lot of readers also have issues with the ending. I thought it was perfect. It made complete sense to me. And I actually think it makes sense, the most sense, if you come in understanding that Jill is the main character. If you're reading this as if it's Boone's story, I could see the ending landing badly. If you're reading it as if it's Jill's story, it lands exactly where it's supposed to. Hear me say that I'm not trying to convince you to read this book. I'm not trying to convince you to like this book. But the Reader Know Thyself takeaway here, I think, is useful. No matter what the book world at large is saying about a title, if you are pulled toward it, try it for yourself. That goes both ways. Everyone loves a book and you try it, you don't like it, listen to that. But if everyone was turned off by a book, but for some reason it's calling to you, trust your niggle. That's a t-shirt that I want. This is Vigil by George Saunders.
I would never wear that t-shirt.
Trust your niggle.
No.
I say it so much in my work that like my staff would think it was funny.
Okay, you can get Here Comes the Guide shirts that say that.
Yeah.
Not me. That genuinely sounds so compelling to me. But the first piece of it, where if you do think it's a book about an oil tycoon and his life and his passing to death, is not appealing to me at all. So
Yeah.
I think it's really useful to hear why it works or why it doesn't for certain readers and know what type of reader you are, where you might land on that list. I also don't hate the idea of a little bit shorter piece of fiction from our friend, Mr. Saunders. So
that's the thing. If it had been 400 pages of this, I think my takeaway would be completely different. But I just felt like it was perfectly paced for what it was. And I have thought about it every single day since I read it.
Excellent.
I really like George Saunders. I know that a book has really like gotten under my skin when I go and listen to the author talk about the book after I've read it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really want to get a sense of him. And I wanted to see if I was totally right or wrong based on what does he say the take home should be of the book or the main characters of the book. And I couldn't actually find him underscoring what I think about it, but his Buddhist perspectives definitely color a lot of the book. And I've been doing a lot of study around that too.
Yeah, that's the part that interests me too.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, my third book is actually another indie press list book, which I just realized now as I'm about to talk about it, but it's from a different month. I'm going to talk about The Quiet Librarian by Alan Eskens.
Mm-hmm.
This is historical fiction, add in some thrills. So not just another indie press list book, another genre mashup, we'll say. Alan Eskens is a favorite of Elizabeth Barnhill on All Things Murderful and at Fabled Bookshop in Waco, Texas. She has regularly chatted with us about The Life We Bury by him. This one was brought to the indie press list in November of 2025 by Content Bookstore in Minnesota. And that is important, partially because Alan Eskens is a local author to them. This becomes more and more obvious as we realize that the location for Content Bookstore in Northfield, Minnesota, is heavily featured in this book alongside the Twin Cities as a whole, which really made it a great reading experience for me. Here's the setup. Hannah Babich is our main character. She is a quiet librarian in Minnesota. She just wants to live her life. Leave her in peace, please and thank you. But at the start of the story, a detective shows up at her front door with terrible news. Her best friend, Amina, has been murdered in her apartment. This is terrible news, of course, because she is Hannah's best friend and really her only friend. They were both immigrants from Bosnia, and any shared past has remained as secret as possible. That's because before Hannah became a middle-aged, quiet librarian, she lived in Bosnia under the name of Nura. While just a teenager, she watched a group of Serbian soldiers show up and slaughter her entire family, mom, dad, and little brother. Nura escaped with only her life, and it changed the course of that life forever. She was thrust into both orphanhood and war at the same time. Already a compelling story, right? This is told in a dual timeline. In the present, Hannah is dealing with the fallout of the death of her friend. In the past, Nura has become a deadly force, known throughout the entire region, a legend in her own right, until she fled the country to the safety of the Twin Cities, which is where the timelines intersect. Now, currently, in the new timeline, Amina's grandson is in Hannah's care. He's only 8 years old. He's traumatized, and she has to care for him, but she's also out for revenge. Yes, please and thank you. I loved this book. Bring on a badass woman who is quietly spending her life in a library and wearing cardigans and glasses. She is just happy, right? Bring on the fact that she is absolutely ripped, but looks like your standard middle-aged lady. Bring on her secret skills and her ruthless nature, which has to be balanced with taking care of a child for the first time. I'm obsessed. I loved this. I loved the historical fiction element here because, as we know, even though I don't read it as often as I would like to, I found out about events that I only had a passing knowledge of in my own history classes and in things that happened during my own lifetime. I loved our female protagonist, of course, and the way she upends everything we expect when we see even her back. Y'all, it's a woman's back on the front of this book. I'm sorry to tell you. She's upending everything you expect from that picture, though. I liked the writing itself. It was propulsive and very readable while also feeling developed and worth chewing on and worth my time. I have a soft spot for Minnesota in general because it's where I spent all my summers growing up. So the setting really worked well for me. Overall, this was a hit out of the park for me. I gave it 5 stars, and it's sitting comfortably over 4 stars on both Goodreads and Storygraph as well. So this is a big winner for this author. I am so glad that Content put it on the indie press list, pushed it to the top of my TBR. I don't know if I would have read it otherwise, but I loved it. This is The Quiet Librarian by Alan Eskens.
I really like this one too. The Hannah, as soon as you said her name, like I read this several months ago, but as soon as you said her name, automatically I was taken back into all the details of the book. And I was so glad to finally read Alan S. Because Elizabeth has been singing his praises forever. And for some reason, like The Life We Bury is on my shelf. And it's one of those ones that I just need to move to the top of my TBR. I think audio is going to be the way to go for that for me because I loved this one on audio so much.
I will say that reading the setup of The Life We Bury again today as I was preparing for this book, I think it's because the protagonist of The Quiet Librarian is a woman that it was so much more likely to capture me. And that's my own readerly hang-up, right? But The Life We Bury has a young man interviewing a Vietnam vet, and definitely a complicated backstory there, as far as I can tell from the publisher blurb. And I'm just not as drawn to that story. It is what it is, right? We all have to know what's going to work for us. Quiet Librarian, reader catnip on a lot of levels for me. And I will say, it sounded like I gave you guys a lot, but that is just like the first chapter of the present timeline and the first chapter of the past timeline is kind of all I pulled from here. There's a lot in this book, and it's so interesting.
Yeah.
All righty, so let's get into our deep dive. Those were our 6 current reads. This was Meredith's idea, and I'm excited to talk about it. We are going to discuss the oldest books on our TBR and whether or not they deserve to stay. What should we do about them? Why have they languished? Do they need a new attention brought to them? So, Meredith, why did you want to talk about this?
All right, well, this was my topic for the latest Reader Know Thyself newsletter. Right, which goes out both on Substack, and you can also get it via our subscription from our website. It's free, but Every 2 weeks, we do a new topic that asks you one question that helps you know yourself as a reader. So this was dispatch number 5, which was, let's look at the oldest things on your TBR. And then let's also take a look at them and say, okay, why is it that they've languished? So I chose a couple for the Reader Know Thyself newsletter, which I won't talk about. So I went to I'd already dealt with those there.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose the three that came next. And I think it's a really good example of why this is a useful exercise.
Okay. Can I ask more nuts and bolts about where your TBR is and how you keep it? Do you have a Goodreads TBR? Is that what you're sorting? What's going on with that?
Yeah. So for this exercise, for me, I mean, we're all going to do different things with our TBR depending on how you keep your TBR. For me, because I read primarily on my e-reader, I read on a Kindle, I decided to use my Kindle library as my TBR because that's really how I use my Kindle library, right? Like when I'm super interested in something, I tend to squirrel it away in my Kindle library. Like I'll immediately grab it and buy it or use a credit for it or whatever and put it into my library. The net effect is I had 679 books in my Kindle library. And so a lot of those I had already read. So I took this as an opportunity because I can never resist a good spring cleaning. This is one of the things my kids laugh at me because anytime something happens like in the kitchen, wherever, where like there's a mess or a leak or whatever, I'll be like, you know what? This is a great opportunity to clean a place where we wouldn't have cleaned before.
Yes.
Let's look for the upside. This was that for me. So I didn't go through all of them, but I told myself, like, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes. I'm going to figure out what 3 books I'm going to talk about on the show. And then I'm going to do some cleaning out of books that I'd already read that I knew I didn't want to reread and just kind of get myself down to at least under 600 books. And I was able to do that.
Okay. That's pretty good.
So depending on how you keep your TBR, reverse sort it and go to your oldest one for this exercise.
Yeah. For me, I ended up going to my Storygraph TBR, which I imported from Goodreads when I switched over from one to the other. And then I sorted by earliest added. The quirky thing about that is I couldn't figure out on Storygraph how to find the date added. So I would go back to Goodreads and find those books. And there I was able to find what date I actually added them to my TBR because I wasn't sure. I also am really good about culling it. So it's not horribly long. Not as long as you might think it could be.
Excellent. Okay. It wasn't 679 books long.
It wasn't 679. It was 175. My paper books in my house don't necessarily match that though. Like my paper TBR doesn't necessarily match what's on my Storygraph TBR. So it's definitely more than 175.
Right.
The books I want to read. Right.
For sure. Yes, definitely. That's just, to me, there's like 5 different, like I could have also done my audiobooks, right? I could have gone into my Libro FM library and reverse sorted it there. Like that would actually also be a really useful thing to, you know what I mean? So just like pick, like the thing is, and we're not always going to go over the Reader Know Thyself topics on the show. I just actually was curious, Kaytee, about what your 3 books would be. But for this exercise, don't overthink it. Don't try to be a completist. Just like pick one place where you have a big old pile of books and try to find your oldest ones.
Right.
Like, let's not let perfect get in the way of good.
Exactly. Okay. So let's go back and forth with our picks. So which one do you want to start with, Meredith?
Okay. My first one was an easy one. And again, the first 2 I talked about in the newsletter. So I'm letting perfect get in the way of good. My first one was easy. And it was a Nicholas Sparks novel called The Lucky One. I do not know what I was thinking because I don't remember a time. Now, again, if Nicholas Sparks is your jam, that is fantastic because I have my authors that I absolutely love that other people are like, really? Nicholas Sparks is not my jam. I'm not a sweeping romantic. I'm not a book that's going to make me cry type person. So I don't know how anything by Nicholas Sparks got onto my TBR, but it was easy because I know that the reader that I am today, this isn't the kind of book that I'm looking for. So this was a quick, easy, nope, this isn't one that's going to rise to the top of my TBR. So I'm going to let it go.
All right. I like it. The first one was also an elimination for me. So the oldest book on my TBR is one I bought on Kindle in March of 2017. It's 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northrop. I'm still interested in reading this book, but I know I haven't because it's going to be rough. And I've
Mm,
seen the movie in the years since I added it to my Kindle. So it no longer feels like this unknown that I have to tackle. I also know that books that only exist on my Kindle may as well not exist at all. They just they don't have any like mental brain space for me. So
okay.
if I want to read this book, I need to get it in paper so I can see it in my house and it can call to me visually. For now, it is off my TBR, knowing that if I need to read it, it will find me again someday. But for now, I feel good about saying, I know this story. If for 9 years, it has not risen to the top. So this is not the time, and I can happily remove it.
Perfect. Good. Okay. Easy.
All righty. What's your next one?
My next one was also fairly easy, but it was really important for me to walk through the why of it. And this next one is Raven Black by Anne Cleves. Now, this is one that I read a really long time ago, but was there as a placeholder because I was trying to decide if I was going to go further in the series.
Okay.
So sometimes that's why a book will be in my Kindle library. And this one, what I've realized about Anne Cleves, there's a lot about her books. Of course, she wrote the Vera novels, and this one is the first of, I guess now there are 8 in the Shetland series novels that are set on the island of Shetland. And I have realized that I really like Anne Cleves' stories on TV, but they're too slow for me in the book form. So everything that I love about both Shetland and Vera really comes through in the shows that are made from them. And I am a completist I've watched the entire Vera series twice. In fact, I love that series. But when I have tried to read the Vera novels and when I read this first one in the Shetland series, it's just really slow for me. So that's just one that I've had to say, you know what? She is best for me in this, in taking her stories in this way. That's what I'm going to do. So I was able to let this one go.
Okay.
Didn't need the
Good.
placeholder anymore.
No more placeholder. Got it. Next book for me is a book called How We Learn: The Surprising Truth About When, Where, and Why It Happens by Benedict Carey. I very clearly remember when I added this to my TBR. I was at a family reunion. My aunt was in education as a teacher and administrator. Now she's retired. And she said she was reading this book at the time that we were hanging out together. So I remember her talking about it and deciding right then to add it to my TBR. It has not risen to the top yet since 2018 because I don't own it in any format. And I only read teaching related books at very specific times of year. At the start of the calendar year, before the school year, or before the school year starts in the summertime. So it's like either it's getting read in January or it's getting read in July. And otherwise, I'm never going to see it because I just don't make space for that in my reading life the entire rest of the year. What I have decided to do with this one is slate it for this summer. And if it doesn't rise to the top of my list at that point, then it's done. It will be removed altogether. I have read a lot of teaching books since 2018, and I feel good about saying, you know, if this one doesn't like catch my eye at that time, it's okay to say, no, thank you, ma'am, moving along to something different.
I absolutely love it. I think that's a very good set of if-then statements, and you'll know exactly how to proceed with it. That's perfect.
Indeed.
All right. My third one is one that I am so glad that was on this list because it is Aunt Dimity and the Family Tree by Nancy Atherton. Now, you guys know I have a long and storied literary history with cozy mystery. Read it solely for 10 years, a long time ago. And now these days, I don't read cozy a ton, but every now and then it's exactly what I need. Like it just fits perfectly. This book is the 16th in a 25 book series. You've got to love cozy mysteries for this long series. I love the Aunt Dimity books. They are set in the Cotswolds. They are the beginning of my love of the Cotswolds. And I'm so glad that I finally have gotten to visit it. The Cotswolds are as beautiful and idyllic as you think they are from these books. And the idea of inheriting your dead aunt's Cotswold cottage and then going there and living there and finding the love of your life and having kids with him. And so the Aunt Dimity series follows this whole thing that happens. I'm so glad that I had kept it there because, again, it was there to remind me, you want to read more in the series, but I needed some space. I haven't read an Aunt Dimity in a long time now.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I've read one since we started the podcast. So it's been a long time. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I need to read an Aunt Dimity. So I immediately borrowed it from the library, which is a way that I can remind myself, yes, this I need to bring up in my queue really, really easily or really soon. And so in not very long, I will be reading Aunt Dimity and the Family Tree. And I just cannot wait to revisit this series. I love it so much.
The way you lit up.
Yes.
When you started talking about that one made me so happy. I'm actually going into our archive and I see that in season 5, episode 18 was when you talked about Aunt Dimity's death.
I think that's the first one.
Well, Aunt Dimity was pressed in 10, 18, 39 of season 1. Like that's the one you were talking about in season 1 and 2. So it feels
Aunt Dimity's
unlikely.
death is the first one.
Okay, well then it was just logged twice. 2 different ways.
Yeah. Or maybe I brought it up again, or maybe I brought it as a let's revisit this because I do really love that first one. Poor Lori. She's a whole different person back there in the very beginning. She's like super down on her.
Aunt Dimity's ghost around? Is that
right? So the shtick of the series is that, and you have to read them in order. You have to read these in order. You have to, because that she's going to meet her husband and it's really good. And she inherits the most beautiful country cottage in that first book, Aunt Dimity's Death. And in the cottage is a treasure trove of letters. There's also a journal. And when Lori opens up a journal, it's blank. But when she opens it up, all of a sudden writing starts to appear and it's Aunt Dimity who is dead, but that's how she communicates with Lori. So she is a character who's very much a character in the books, but it's only Lori who interacts with her. And like Lori will get into like spats with her because Aunt Dimity will tell Lori to do something that Lori does not want to do because Lori's like very introverted, especially at first. And but Aunt Dimity's like, you need to get out there. And, she's like 40 when, all of this starts. She's like, you need to get out there and whatever. And anyway, she ends up meeting her husband. It's very romantic. And there's, the dead people are always bad and you're glad that they're dead anyway. It's very cozy. They're very formulaic, which is why I needed there to be a long time. You can't, I did binge them back in my cozy reading days. I think I probably read 8 in a row. But then at some point you're like, okay, Lori, I need a little bit of a break from you. But I am ready for my next one in the series. And I'm so happy that I have like 9 more that I haven't even read yet. Although sometimes Lori she's a little type B, to be fair. And type B is not always easy for me. But her husband is very type A, so he really whips her into shape. But sometimes I want to smack her. There's also a little pink stuffed bunny that features in this. It's a very cozy series. It's my favorite cozy series though. There's a lot of food, a lot of scones.
I think that's great. I love that brought that back up to the top for you. My third book I'll be quick about on my TBR is The Hunger by Alma Katsu. This is a Meredith made me do it read, which I added to my TBR after Meredith brought it to the podcast about halfway through season 1. Y'all, it's time. It's been
That's a really good one. That's a really, really good one.
It sounds great. I still remember you talking about it. Obvious now, it's been long enough for me to pick it up and not be like, Meredith just talked about this one, but I just read it and I can't wait to tell you what I thought. So I am putting it after my current audiobook. I'm just going to dive in.
Okay. So it's, it's a horror retelling of the Donner Party. So, right. Which I grew up going to Donner Lake. And so that figured very prominently in my childhood. But also, obviously, it is a lot of the horror surrounds the fact that it's set in winter. So like just to say that if you, like me, love to read winter when it's getting warm outside, it'll be perfect. But it is a very wintry book, but it's also, oh, it's so good.
Yes. Yes. I can't wait. I'm definitely getting into it.
So, Kaytee, I think this is an endlessly interesting topic about like what has been on there forever. It feels like reaching into a
Like a time capsule.
right? So that's interesting. I really, really want to hear, and we have, like, people have been responding to the emails and from the newsletter. They just hit reply and they've been telling us like, hey, here are the books. It's endlessly fascinating. There was one person, Kaytee, today, did you see this email that came in? She said, I went and looked and the oldest one on my TBR is Gone Girl. And she's
Shut
like,
up.
I have never read Gone Girl. And she's like, maybe it's time. And I'm like, oh, girl, it is time.
Like, put away your computer and get out your reader immediately.
Why are you replying to this email? Go read that book. If you have not read Gone Girl.
Has she not had it spoiled for her in the intervening years? Because, wow.
Even if you have a general sense, just go, that is just one of those books that is as good as advertised. So I just love that people are finding these things where they're like, oh yeah, I meant to read this particular one. So it's fun. We will put something on social this week, and I really can't wait to hear what the oldest books are for you.
Yes, we are excited about that. All right. Before we go, we have a few more things to chat about here. First, I will tell y'all about our bookish friend of the week. Bookish friend Nina had an observation about her reading life that I think it's useful for all of us to do a little bit of reflecting on too. She says, I noticed recently that my go-to genre changed, and I was wondering what genre you all tend to pick up when you're in a slump or just need an in-between book. In the past, Nina used to pick up a mystery or crime novel that felt fast-paced. Now, she says, I lean toward nonfiction and shorter character-driven books. Would love to hear your thoughts. That's a big pivot, right? The comments here range from another nonfiction lover whose husband calls her in-between books her facty books, and a reader who says novellas that would be classified as monster smut are her in-between books, and others enjoy mysteries and horror. But these are the books that kind of keep your reading mojo going when you finished something and you aren't sure what to start next. I love this idea, Nina, of knowing what works for you as a reset. This is another great example of reader knowing yourself, Nina knowing herself and what works for her reading life right now, which will continue to change. And that's the other part of it, is not figuring out this is who I am as a reader. She has found this little pivot in her life that my reading life in general is still working right, but my in-between book had to change. And I thought that was such a great example of knowing yourself as a reader. Thanks, Nina.
I love it. It's so smart. That is one of the things that I was thinking about too when I was going through my Kindle library, is that there are a lot of there's a lot of monster smut novels there. There's a lot
That's where it belongs, is on a Kindle.
Exactly. Victorian, like bodice ripper romance. Those are and then some cozy, those are my in-between books that just do help to keep the momentum going and cleanse your palate. I think it's really useful to have those always ready for action. I am also doing a little bit of getting curious or getting thoughtful here for mine, because to circle back to the idea of reading seasonally, right? Like where I talked at the beginning about we're getting ready for reading in the warm weather. But also one of the things that I'm realizing is that I have fully entered into another season of my life. And we talk a lot about this when people are like, I have young kids and my reading is broken. No, you're in a really particular season. And I feel like this is one of those things that should have been really obvious to me, but it took a while for me to get here. And this is really what I've been thoughtful about, is I am fully in, and I don't have little kids who need me in any sort of way regularly part of my life now. Now, this is a big thing for me because I have actively parented for 31 years, right? My youngest is 14. I've been actively parenting little ones or young ones for a really long time. So for that reason, I think it had solidified in me this idea that you wake up in the morning and the first thing you get up and get out of bed and get to work or get the kids to school, like all of those kinds of things. But I'm not in that season anymore where I need to do that. And so all of a sudden I was talking with my therapist and I realized that I could kind of rearrange my schedule so that my mornings look different now. But for some reason, I'm like having some feeling around that, or something's keeping me from doing that. So we talked a lot about like how this really pings on issues of identity, and it really pings on issues of habits and longstanding ideas of ourselves. And so she said, let's not let the feeling about the thing take up as much space as the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that would be groundbreaking for me, because I have a lot of feelings about things and thoughts, and that takes up a lot of space. She's like, what if we just said it's okay to be in a different season? What would then, if you didn't have to worry about what that meant in some bigger existential way, what would it actually look like? And I was like, well, it would look like me staying in bed a little bit later, even though it's a Monday morning, because that's when I like to read, and reading is something that I want to prioritize doing more. But that feels like a weird time. She's like, no, now you're getting into feelings. She's like, this week, let's just practice doing that, because like you can, because I'm working till a lot later in the evening, right? So I can, my point is, sometimes we have to stop and really consider, what season are we in, and are we actually leaning into that season? So yes, it can look like, hey, I'm not parenting the littles anymore. What can that look like? But it also could look like, hey, I used to be able to read all the time, and now I'm parenting littles. So I need to lean into the season that I'm in right now, which doesn't look like leisurely reading on a Saturday morning, but maybe it looks like reading in the afternoon when baby's playing on the mat and doing some tummy time. Let's lean into the season that we're in right now, and not let our feelings about that season take up a lot of space. I have a feeling that somebody else out there might be kind of dealing with the same sort of thing, even though I feel like I've a little bit talked myself into a circle.
Well, you've definitely had a lot of feelings.
I do.
You just had another feeling.
I have a lot of thoughts and feelings.
I do feel like this leans into, I apparently have feelings also. This leans into that that mantra that we have about giving yourself grace as a reader, right? You can't hold too tightly to what your reading life used to look like, because that's the only way you ever got any reading in, whether it is that your season has changed into a busier one, or one that's more demanding of your hands at any given time, or your driving abilities at any given time, versus the season that you're in now. You're still allowed to give yourself grace, even if this season feels easier than the other one, right? It still requires a change of you.
See, I'm really good at rising to the occasion when things get hard. I'm very bad at the opposite, which sounds like I'm humble bragging. I'm not, because this is actually a really obnoxious thing about me that makes people around me not happy or comfortable. Like, this is not a fun thing about me. So like, I'm really trying to figure myself out on that realm of like, but is it okay if I can do something I want to do? Does that mean I'm failing in some other way? Maybe not. This is why I go to therapy every week, Kate.
We love therapy. Cosign.
I need help. Help is a good thing. Exactly. It's so useful. I'm so grateful for it. All right, Katie.
We've used our friend's full hour of bookish therapy today. We better wrap this up.
We've put him through it. That is it for this week, my friends. As a reminder, here's where you can connect with us. You can find me, I'm Meredith, at Meredith Monday Schwartz on Instagram.
And you can find me, Kaytee, at Notes on Bookmarks on Instagram. Our show is produced and edited every week by Megan Pudavang Evans, and you can find her on Instagram at Most of Megan's Reads.
Can I just say, Kaytee, I was such a burr in Megan's butt about she was so helpful to me about last week's episode, because I was like, the next day, I'm like, can you go and fix this and that? Because I just really felt like I performed badly on last week's episode. I just was really upset about my performance. And Megan was so awesome. And she was like, no, I listened back to it and that was fine. Or I'll clean this up. I'll change, It's really helpful to have an editor who understands your like insecurities and peccadillos. I really appreciate Megan.
Well, and often makes us sound smarter, because she texted me. She was like, hey, just so you know, there was a little mistake here, but I did what I could to clean it up.
All the time. That is the case. I love it so much. All right. Full show notes with the title of every book we mentioned in the episode and timestamps so you can zoom right to where we talked about it can be found in our show notes. and on our website at Currently Reading Podcast.
You can also follow the show at Substack, on YouTube, on Instagram, and by subscribing to our newsletter. You'll find all of those at Currently Reading Podcast. You can also email us at hello@currentlyreadingpodcast.com.
Yeah, people have said that they're on Blue Watch and they watch us on YouTube, and the first thing they do is try to figure out, is Blue in the Blue's right there?
He's always in the chair.
That's a reason.
Sometimes
to
he
tune
does
in
funny things. I'm always on Blue Watch also.
Are you good? All right. If you want more of this kind of content, and really, why wouldn't you? It's riveting. Join us on Patreon, because it's only $5 a month and you get hundreds and hundreds of hours more content. You get a fantastic bookish community, and you keep this show commercial free. You can also, of course, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. We would really appreciate any and all 5-star reviews that you want to give us. And you can shout us out on social media. All of those things help us to find our perfect audience.
Yes, Bookish Friends are the best friends. Thank you for helping us grow and get closer to our goals.
All right. Until next week, may your coffee be hot
and your book be unputdownable.
Happy reading, Kaytee.
Happy reading, Meredith.